Welcome to the Music for the Soul podcast, where we talk honestly about difficult things. This is a place where music, hope, and healing come together. I'm Becky Nordquist.
And I'm Steve Seiler.
Well, I am very excited for this conversation today. I hope that y'all have your preferred beverage of choice and a cozy place to sit and hang out with us during this particular episode, because I have a very dear friend. Amanda Currie is with us today, and she has a music education degree. She's taught music. Oh my goodness, there's so much I could say about her. She's spent the last 20 plus years serving in different capacities with music in church and the community. She's an incredible pianist, and I love her vocal. She's a great singer, and we've actually even co-written together a little bit, and we've had the privilege of singing together and worshiping God together and serving him together. She's a dear sister, and probably one of the most precious things to me is that as we lost our baby Nicholas, Amanda was that person that went out in -3-degree weather in Michigan, and I'm sure probably with the wind chill it was even colder, but she was the one who captured so many of the pictures that you have seen with the book and all of the promotional things with Before We Said Hello. That is Amanda's artistry at work, and it has so deeply touched many people, particularly Dave and I. I'm continually blessed. It has been the gift that has continued to give to my sore heart in the losses that we've experienced, but particular with Nicholas. And she's brought such comfort over the years to many people. So I am so excited to have you today, Amanda. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and being willing to share your heart and your gifts with us.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Good to be with you.
Well, I'm going to jump right in here, and I hope it's okay because we are going to talk about loss. And as you and I have talked before, there are so many varying degrees and kinds of loss and grief. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of your own journey with different kinds of loss and grief.
Yeah, absolutely. My first tragic experience with loss actually dates back to childhood, and a young boy from our church was taken right in front of his own home at 4 years old, and they were good friends of our family. I babysat for them. And so even at a young age, just the realization that our lives are not necessarily until 95 or, whatever old age God allows us to live to. I just remember that being a definitive moment of knowing that not everyone's lifespan is that long. And then the process of watching that family grieve and watching our church family grieve around them, and just having a framework for that. Fast forward several years, and I was newly married. My husband and I met in college, and we had just been married a couple of years, and I was back to my first couple of days teaching that fall. So I had 2 years of teaching in full time and was actually dealing with a lot of physical symptoms that just wouldn't get resolved even through all the testing and stuff that we were doing. And God just really laid it on my heart, and with the recommendation of my doctor, to go part-time to school that year to teach and just to give my body some rest. And we trusted the Lord with that. It was definitely not in the plan third year in with, some school bills and car bills and stuff to think about going part-time before we even had kids. I thought it would be a ways off before that was ever an option on the table. But I remember my father-in-law saying to my husband, like, if God's leading you to this and really putting it on her heart, I think that you should listen and just trust him. And even if it's just for this year, to get to a more healthy place. So we made that decision together, in the spring or maybe in June. And then I went to school part-time in August. And the second day that I was in there for our teacher training, I got called out of our classroom, and they just said, you have a family emergency you need to go home for. So in my mind, I'm thinking probably one of my grandparents had passed away. And I just had a quick drive home. But when I got there, my husband's car was there, and also my in-laws' car. And I walked in the door, and my husband just, he had to tell me that my brother had passed in a car accident. And he was 20 at the time. It was early in the morning and he fell asleep driving. And I remember, of course, the initial shock, but I remember saying when I was packing some stuff up, I can't believe I'm packing to go up to my brother's funeral. Like, how is this possible? So we had about 100-mile drive between where we were living and where we needed to go to get back to my parents' house. And we were maybe halfway up to Cadillac, and we had just been going through a sermon series in Romans, and I like the words came back to me so quickly from our pastor of it's not a matter of if you'll struggle, it's when, and then choosing ahead of time how you're going to respond. And I didn't know how quickly that was going to be important in my life. And I'm really grateful. Like, it is hard to talk about grief and loss, and it's hard to let your mind go to those hard places, but it is crucial to have a theology of suffering and to understand just the importance for your mind and your heart to choose ahead of time where you're going to turn in those hard times, because it makes all the difference. So we went that week and spent the week up with my family. They were spread. We were literally spread all over. My dad was gone to a fly-in place only into Canada fishing with, and he was with his like small group men and some of his dear friends and brother. So he was with those guys. My mom was up in the UP. She was with all of her sisters, and my sister was in Traverse City. It took all day for all of us to get home to be together, and another brother that was in Grand Rapids to come up. And so we had the week of his funeral, but I just, through all of what we went through with losing my brother, my parents have had a very strong, like, just word that we will still choose joy. And it has been hard. It's been hard, but they have continuously and faithfully been an example to us of just choosing joy in the middle of pain. And that's made a huge difference for us as kids, and seeing them weather grief. Like, the statistics for a divorce after the loss of a child are really high. And that has just been a gift to us. Like, I know it's not been easy, but to have them stay together through the grief process has helped tremendously. So Curtis is kind of, I mean, that is my brother's name. And that is kind of the driving force behind a lot of why I feel like God, how I guess he's gifted me in the ability to step into other people's pain, and just knowing like what people did for us that week and then in the years to follow. That's, yeah, just in so many ways, whether it was showing up with a meal or helping put together music stuff or putting together a slideshow or bringing over extra paper products that week. Like, we joke, we're like, somebody literally brought toilet paper to our house. Like, who thinks of that? But you have like an extra 50 to 75 people at your house like all week long. And just, I love, like, it's such a beautiful picture, the way God just lays different things on people's hearts to come together and make it possible for someone to get through their darkest hour. And what a gift, and just a testimony to how he uniquely gifts us all.
Amanda, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that story with our listeners. One of the gifts I think I hear in that story is, our culture just wants us to hurry up and move on. 3 days off of work is what is typically given if you lose somebody. People think, well, if I can just get through the first year and get through all the major life events, then I'll be okay. And grief is not cooperative like that.
No.
It comes, and it's interesting. It comes and it goes and it comes again when you least expect it. And I think, we grow in our grief to different places. And I think for people to hear that after all these years, and you didn't say how long ago it was, but after all these years, that your brother's life still means so much to you. When you talk about him, the grief is fresh. You loved him, and that love never dies, right? The love never dies.
It's been 22 years.
Wow.
Mhm.
And so
Oh.
for you to take that love then and turn around and bless others who are walking a painful road is so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that that's how you've chosen to use your grief. God bless you for that.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
remember very well that time, and you mentioned the sermon series that we were in. And I think that series in particular really affected a lot of us to have that theology in place before things happen, those decisions on where you're going to willfully, even when you don't feel like it, put your faith and belief and trust. It does make all the difference, not just to survive, but then to carry out our Great Commission, right? And you certainly have done that. Thank you so much again for sharing about Curtis and keeping his memory
Yeah.
fresh and alive, and just love you to pieces. And it's been an honor and a joy to kind of be on a sideline view as you've grieved and shared and glorified God through it. It is a testimony for us all and encouragement for us all to follow the pattern of Christ ultimately, but you've exampled Christ well here, my sister, and I'm grateful for you. And one of those ways, like I had mentioned earlier, is your photography. And I just wondered if you
Hmm.
could talk a little bit about how that all began and what led you into what you have, how you've blessed so many people through their darkest days of losing a child or infant. I just would love to hear you share with our listeners about how that started and unfolded.
Yeah. So my brother that we were just talking about, I have always had an interest in photography, and my business partner and dear friend and I were starting a business. And so we asked my brother and his girlfriend if they'd be willing to be our models to practice an engagement session. They were not engaged, they were dating at the time, but we're like, well, you guys let us practice. So we went and did a photo shoot with them. And that was actually just a couple months before he died in the car accident. And I realized in that moment just how much pictures meant to our family, and it just like lit a passion in me to capture life moments for people that you don't get back, and it's not in a way that is driven by fear where we have to get this. It might be the last. Like, I don't want that just negative or fearful mindset, but just in a way of acknowledging that the reality is there, that our lives don't all continue on forever, right? So my business partner and I kept that going, and it's something that I could do from home as we started to have children. And then she actually went through a long journey with infertility and had a baby boy. And at 39 weeks, we had been shooting a wedding together that weekend, and she was due the next week, and felt him moving around a lot that night as we were shooting the wedding. And a short couple days later, he was like, they went to their appointment for, the appointment right before the week he was due, and couldn't find a heartbeat. And I just remember like the deep, deep grief with them, going through longing so much for him and then having to give him right back to the Lord. And there was a short time that I was able to go up to the hospital and take pictures of them with their son in the few hours that they had with him. And though he didn't live on this earth at all, they were able to spend time with his body, and just to be able to capture some of those moments for him, like we did with you. And I just knew in that moment that if God had other opportunities like that to step into, oh, it's so painful and it's hard to step into someone's darkest hour, but you just know theirs is so much darker than yours. Like, God's asking you to do a hard thing, but he will give you everything you need to do what he's calling you to do in that time. And that's just something through the years. Like, I became part of a group up at the hospital for a while that would go and take pictures for families that were experiencing infant loss. And as we grew our family, it got harder and harder for the moms, I think, in particular, that were having babies. Like, if I was pregnant at the time, to come in when they've just lost a child. Like, I just realized it was probably too hard on them. And so anyway, through the years, then like now that my kids are all like older now and stuff, I've still been able to do that for families here and there. And I would not say that I enjoy it, but I feel like God has called me to it. And I know it's a gift, just like what other people have given to us in our times of loss. So something that I want to be obedient to and give if he allows me to keep doing that.
Well, I'm so very grateful that you've been willing to kind of revisit your own pain in order to serve my family. I'll be forever
Mhm.
grateful for that. Did you find that, during your pregnancy, because you've had the exposure of infant loss and pregnancy loss, did you find that it kind of jaded you a little to, hey, things always turn out great when you find out you're pregnant? Did you find that at all, or how did it affect you?
I don't know that it made me fearful of being pregnant at all, but I do know that it definitely made me more grateful and more patient with my kids, just knowing that they're such a gift. Like, you don't necessarily get to keep them forever. And so I think that that mindset was already there from losing my brother, like watching my parents lose their son. And now that I have a son that has turned 20 and now he's a year past the age at which my brother died, but I feel like even as we're sending kids off to college, like so many parents are having such a hard time with their kids leaving for college. And I just feel so grateful that I got to watch him get to be this old. It's such a shift in the way we think. And not that it's not hard to have them gone to college, but it's so different. I just feel so grateful that I've gotten to watch my kids
Mm,
all get to this age. But no, I don't think it necessarily made me fearful of losing our own, but definitely made me more grateful for healthy babies being born and not
mm,
to take it for granted.
mm.
Well, Becky mentioned earlier your music background, and we're music for the soul here, so maybe we could talk about music for a little while.
Yeah,
Uh, that'd be-
absolutely.
yeah. So you had a music education degree. What was the focus of your music degree?
It was vocal for K through 12. And then I had a kind of a dual major with piano performance as well. So just piano vocal. And I taught for 3 years with K through eighth grade. And I loved it. Had about 600 students that I had for
Is that
music.
all?
Yep. So it was kind of crazy, but I really, for that time in my life, I loved it. But we both knew that once we started having kids, that we wanted me to be able to be home. So that transitioning into photography was a nice way for me to be able to be home the hours that my husband was gone working. And then I could shoot on the off hours when he was at home with them.
So do you still get to
But
do
yeah,
music from time to time?
I do. I play piano in our church and do some singing and then help with directing things here and there for different praise services and stuff and special events. So I love that I can still use my degree in that way. And then something I think time wise that I can do at this stage in my life is for memorial services, celebration of life services that happen at our church. If they're happening during the daytime, I have the ability to go and play piano for them or sing or help lead worship. And that's something that I know means a lot to families. And I feel like God's enabled me to be able to do it, even though there's still grief there for me. I feel like He allows me to set it aside during those hours and to be able to just know more deeply what these families are going through and just try to think of it in that way when I'm there, that it just helps me to be able to identify more with what they're walking through and have a sensitivity to that.
And the way our brains are wired, we process language in the left hemisphere of our brain, and we process
Mhm.
melody in the right hemisphere, and trauma is processed in the right hemisphere. So when you go in and play music for people, you're actually ministering directly to that place in their heart that is hurting so much. And that's why music is so
Mm.
beautiful and so powerful and so important at a time of loss. So, and of course, when you're doing that, you're really stepping into sacred territory with the
Mm.
family.
It
So
is. It is.
Is
Absolutely.
there is there a particular song that ministered to you? around the time of Curtis's passing?
Yeah, my cousin actually, who we grew up 5 days apart, like we were born 5 days apart, and we both absolutely love music. He's an amazing piano player. He came up from down south for my brother's funeral and played and sang Stephen Curtis Chapman's With Hope. And that, I mean, I could still probably say all the words today because that song just played over and over and over and over in my mind. And it really is kind of what anchored me. I feel like that was just like from the verse, we do not grieve as those who have no hope, and really just helped me through the years. And still to this day, like if the opportunity is there to share it with a family, I do, because I feel like that message that we have hope is timeless. And
Mm.
everybody needs to hear it and have that to cling to. So
I wonder if somebody's out there listening and they know of someone who has need of the kind of photography work you do, is there a way for them to find you, get in touch with you? I don't want to put it out there if you don't want
yeah.
us to, but
So I don't have like an active website anymore for my photography because it's been very much just kind of on my own and I don't pursue it as a business. But certainly the best email probably is wearhopeclothing@gmail.com. Wear, just like WEAR, wearhopeclothing@gmail.com. And I'm in the Grand Rapids area in Michigan and know some people around Michigan. If anyone ever gets in, has a need for that, certainly I would be glad to find some friends that have the same sort of heart for this and
Mm.
let them know. I don't know if the ministry still exists at the hospital, like if someone else carried it on that we used to have. Certainly, I think that nurses now, even with all the digital technology that's available and it's so much easier to take pictures for people, I know that a lot of nurses are really good at helping with that too in labor and delivery. So,
okay, thank you.
yeah.
Well, now, Amanda, I know that the songs that Becky did for the Before We Said Hello project were meaningful to you. Can you say a little bit about that?
Sure. We had a couple from this area a couple years ago that lost their infant son. And I was up there and took pictures for them in the time right after he was born and did some video and stuff too. And I tried to like how do you even capture that time for people, but put together a video for them of both still and video images and clips and stuff. And then I was able to use Becky's songs to go with those. And I just feel like they both bring so much hope for that family. And I know that they'll watch it over and over through the years. And for her, I know she specifically said that it just brought so much validation to them of how much they loved their son, even though they didn't really get any time with him here on this earth. And I feel like for moms, especially, there's just so much physical trauma going through a birth that you hardly know what happened or can remember that day. It's all kind of a fog. And so for them, just the gift of being able to know specifically, like see their emotions that were in those moments and see the love they had on their faces for him, like just has brought a lot of healing and comfort. So those two songs in particular, I felt like were really helpful, and just really fitting to help bring some hope in the middle of that.
I'm wondering, we've talked a lot about different kinds of loss and between your experience and you entering into my experience and so many others. Amanda, is there just an encouraging word that you could give to somebody who's out there right now that might be walking that difficult and most of the time a pretty dark road of grieving?
Yeah, I think that most of all, what has continued to be something that I've had to work through is that there's just always going to be a certain level of sorrow. And while time does help, I don't know that it ever fully heals. And I mean, it scars over in a different way. And there's parts of me that are a version of myself that I would never have become without the trauma that we've been through and the loss that we've been through. But to be able to choose in the middle of that, like you just get this one life, right? So if we only get one life, And you just know sorrow is going to always be part of that. I have had to continuously choose joy in the middle of it and to be okay with knowing that those two things can run side by side. And just because I feel joy and can smile and laugh one day doesn't mean that there's not also sorrow still there. It doesn't need to be filled with guilt that, like, I shouldn't be able to be happy right now. I just lost my brother a week ago. Like, man, I remember laughing at his funeral, and in the split second of laughter, it felt so good to laugh. And at the very same time, just felt like guilt of like, how could I be laughing at my brother's funeral, right? But realizing that those two things can coincide and that you can feel both, it was really freeing to me because it's like, if this is the only life I get to live, I don't want to live it sad every day. Like, and there is definitely a period of time where you can't make yourself feel joy or happy for a while, but when that day comes, to feel the freedom to like just be thankful, like, God, thank you for giving me breath today. Thank you for giving me the gift of laughter. Thank you for giving me this kid that's like making me laugh while I'm also still crying, choosing joy and sorrow. And then the other thing I think that has just been huge for me is to choose definitively to believe that God is for me.
Yes.
And to not believe that lie that because he allowed pain, that he is not still for me. And that has been huge to just really like grab onto that and put that lie to death that God is not for us, that he is, and that he's not the reason for all this pain that has happened in our life, but he's the rescue in the middle of all of it.
Beautifully
Amen.
said. Yes.
He is the rescue.
Love it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Love your heart.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing it
Love you.
today and all these beautiful, tender places, and just love you to pieces. Amanda, thank you again so much for your life coinciding with mine. I'm forever grateful to God for how he has used you and just the beautiful sister that you are in your heart for him and your willingness to serve wherever he asks you to go. And I know there have been some really difficult places as you've shared today, but I know people will be encouraged by your story and your heart. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
If you enjoyed the discussion today, please share it with a friend and give us a positive review on iTunes.
And please visit our website, musicforthesoul.org, where you can stream or download every song in our catalog. Also, right now, we're making available at this link I'm about to give you some free devotions from Becky's book, Before We Said Hello. That address is musicforthesoul.org/before Devo. That's the word before followed by DEVO. And we'd also like to especially let you know about our project Drink Deep, 14 songs for people who are grieving any kind of loss. That, of course, is also available at our website. And as we go out today, we're going to hear the song Before We Said Hello that has been spoken about in the broadcast today. Thank you so much for being with us. God bless.
We were so excited, what anticipation. We prepared a place for you inside our hearts. Oh, how you were wanted. We had plans and dreams. Then in an instant, it all came apart. Like a flower that was crushed before it could bloom say you're in heaven, and someday I'll see you. But that doesn't fill the ache I'm feeling now. Your life was so special, such a miracle. Life goes on, but I just don't know how. Like a flower that was crushed before it could bloom, like a story just begun that ended much too soon. We grieve the child